silence as God's language. The silence of Bethlehem is not a void, nor is it a lack of meaning. It is a fullness so profound that words would only diminish it. On the holy night of Christ's birth, God speaks not through thunder or proclamation, but through silence. This silence is not passive. It is intentional, deliberate, and deeply revelatory. In Bethlehem, silence becomes the language through which God chooses to communicate his deepest truth. Human beings often associate silence with absence of sound, action, or presence. Yet in the biblical tradition, silence frequently marks moments of divine closeness. Before creation, there is silence. Before revelation, there is stillness. Before the word is spoken, there is listening. The silence of Bethlehem belongs to this sacred pattern. It is the silence that precedes the most decisive word God will ever speak, his word made flesh. God's choice of silence reveals something essential about his nature. He does not impose himself. He does not force attention or demand recognition. Instead, he waits. In Bethlehem, God enters the world quietly, respecting human freedom to such an extent that his presence can be ignored. The silence of the holy night protects this freedom. It allows love to remain love, not coercion. God desires to be welcomed, not feared. This divine silence stands in sharp contrast to the noise of human power. Throughout history, rulers announce their authority with spectacular decrees, monuments, armies, and ceremony. Yet the true king enters history without announcement. Caesar's census fills the roads with travelers and noise. Yet it is merely background to a far greater event unfolding in silence. Bethlehem exposes the illusion of human power by revealing a divine power that needs no display. Silence also shapes the way God is known. Loudness can overwhelm. Silence invites attentiveness. Only those willing to listen deeply can perceive what is happening in Bethlehem. This is why the mystery of the Nativity is revealed not to the distracted or self-important, but to those whose lives already include silence. Shepherds watching by night, Mary pondering in her heart, Joseph listening in dreams. The silence of Bethlehem is selective, not exclusive. It welcomes all, but is perceived only by the attentive. In this sense, silence is not merely the setting of the incarnation. It is its pedagogy. God teaches humanity how to encounter him. He does not begin with explanation or doctrine, but with presence. The silence of Bethlehem invites contemplation before comprehension. It asks humanity not to analyze first, but to behold. This is why the Nativity has always been a subject of prayer more than argument, of worship more than debate. The silence of Bethlehem also reveals the vulnerability of God. Silence exposes one to misunderstanding, neglect, and rejection. A God who comes silently risks being unnoticed. Yet God accepts this risk. In doing so, he reveals that his love is not dependent on human response. He gives himself fully, even knowing that many will not see or hear. The silence of the holy night thus becomes a mirror of divine generosity, love given freely, without guarantee of return. This silence carries within it a quiet authority. It does not argue. It convinces by presence. The child in the manger does not speak. Yet his silence already judges the noise of human pride. Without condemning, it exposes emptiness. In the presence of divine silence, false securities are unmasked. The Holy Night teaches that truth does not always need defense. Sometimes it simply needs to be allowed to exist. For the believer, the silence of Bethlehem poses a question that is deeply personal. Can we remain with God without constant reassurance? Can we trust His presence even when He does not speak loudly or act visibly? Bethlehem invites a faith mature enough to rest in silence. It challenges the tendency to equate God's activity with emotional intensity or dramatic signs. The Church has always recognized this dimension of the Nativity. The most ancient celebrations of Christmas were marked by nighttime vigils, candlelight, and restrained joy. Even music, when present, served the silence rather than overpowering it. The Holy Night was understood as a time when heaven leaned close to earth, and silence became the appropriate response to mystery. In the modern world, this silence is increasingly difficult to encounter. Constant noise fills public and private spaces alike. Silence is often feared, as it exposes inner emptiness or unresolved longing. Yet Bethlehem insists that silence is not an enemy, but a threshold. It is the place where God chooses to cross into human life. To enter the silence of Bethlehem is not to escape reality, but to face it more honestly. In silence, masks fall away. Distractions lose their power. The heart becomes capable of receiving what cannot be manufactured or controlled. The Holy Night teaches that God comes most deeply where the soul becomes still enough to welcome Him. Thus, the silence of Bethlehem is not merely something to admire. It is something to enter. It invites imitation. It calls believers to cultivate spaces of quiet where God can speak without words. In doing so, the Holy Night continues not as memory, but as living encounter. Bethlehem Zias, the noise of the world. Bethlehem stands in quiet opposition to the noise of the world. On the holy night of Christ's birth, two realities unfold simultaneously. One marked by power, movement, and proclamation, and the other by stillness, humility, and hiddenness. The world is busy counting, commanding, and controlling, while in Bethlehem, God is being born in silence. This contrast is not accidental. It is revelatory. Through it, the gospel exposes the difference between human noise and divine truth. The noise of the world is often the sound of self-assertion. Empires announce themselves through decrees, monuments, and force. On the night Jesus is born, the Roman Empire is at work. A census has been ordered. Roads are crowded. Names are recorded. Authority is exercised from afar. Caesar believes he is shaping history, yet he remains unaware that history's true turning point is occurring quietly beyond his notice. Bethlehem reveals the limits of worldly power by showing how easily it overlooks what truly matters. This worldly noise creates an illusion of importance. Activity is mistaken for meaning. Visibility is confused with significance. The Holy Night unmasks this illusion. While the empire speaks loudly, it brings no salvation. While it counts bodies, God gives life. Bethlehem does not compete with the world's noise. It simply reveals another order of reality. In the stillness of the stable, God shows that what saves the world does not need to announce itself. The noise of the world also manifests in distraction. Human life becomes crowded with demands, anxieties, ambitions, and endless information. There is little room for listening, little patience for waiting. Into this restless environment, Christ is born unnoticed. The Holy Night suggests a sobering truth. God can be present, yet ignored not because he is absent, but because hearts are too full of noise to recognize him. Bethlehem's silence is therefore not merely a contrast. It is a critique. It questions the values that shape human priorities. Why is noise equated with success? Why is speed mistaken for progress? Why is attention given to what is loud rather than what is true? In the stable, God offers a different vision of life, one rooted in presence rather than performance, depth rather than display. This contrast is deeply personal. The noise of the world is not only external, it lives within the human heart. Restless thoughts, unexamined desires, and constant comparison create an interior noise that makes listening difficult. Bethlehem challenges this inner chaos. It invites the believer to confront the question, what fills my heart so completely that there is no room for silence? The Holy Night does not accuse. It invites discernment. The silence of Bethlehem also reveals God's patience. Rather than shouting over the noise of the world, God waits. He does not force silence upon humanity. He offers it as a gift. The Holy Night teaches that God respects human freedom even when it leads to distraction or indifference. He remains present, trusting that silence will eventually be sought by those who hunger for truth. In contrast to the world's noise, Bethlehem offers attentiveness. Mary listens. Joseph discerns. Shepherds hear. Each of these figures embodies a posture of openness that allows them to perceive what others miss. The Holy Night reveals that silence is not an escape from reality, but a way of entering it more fully. Those who step away from noise do not lose touch with life. They discover its deepest meaning. The noise of the world often promises security, but delivers anxiety. It insists that control must be maintained, that success must be visible, that worth must be proven. Bethlehem offers another foundation. The child in the manger possesses nothing, yet lacks nothing essential. In him, God reveals that true security comes not from control, but from trust. The silence of the Holy Night becomes a place where fear loosens its grip. This contrast extends into the way truth is communicated. The world persuades through repetition, volume, and dominance. God persuades through presence. The silence of Bethlehem carries a quiet authority that does not need reinforcement. It invites rather than coerces. This form of communication respects the dignity of the listener, allowing truth to be received freely rather than imposed. For the Church, Bethlehem vs. the noise of the world remains an ongoing tension. The temptation to adopt the world's methods to seek influence through visibility, relevance through noises constant. Yet, the Holy Night reminds the Church of its true strength. The gospel does not require constant amplification to remain effective. Its power lies in fidelity, humility, and the quiet witness of transformed lives. In the modern age, this tension becomes even more acute. Technology ensures that noise is continuous and inescapable. Silence is often uncomfortable, even feared. Yet Bethlehem insists that without silence, the incarnation cannot be recognized. The Holy Night becomes a prophetic challenge to contemporary culture, calling it to rediscover the value of stillness. Bethlehem does not reject the world, but redeems it by offering an alternative rhythm. It does not deny activity, but roots it in contemplation. The Holy Night teaches that silence and action are not enemies. Silence gives direction to action. It ensures that what is done flows from truth rather than impulse. Without Bethlehem's silence, action becomes noise. With it, action becomes love. For the individual believer, choosing Bethlehem over noise is an act of faith. It requires intentional withdrawal from constant stimulation. It demands courage to be still when the world urges constant motion. Yet the Holy Night promises that such a choice is not loss, but gain. In silence, the heart becomes capable of hearing what truly matters. The contrast between Bethlehem and the noise of the world ultimately reveals the nature of salvation. God does not save by overpowering the world's noise, but by offering a quieter truth that endures. Noise fades. Silence remains. Empires pass. The Word made flesh abides. The Holy Night teaches that what is born in silence has the strength to outlast what is built in noise. Thus, Bethlehem stands as a perpetual invitation, amid the clamor of history and the distractions of modern life. It calls humanity back to what is essential. The silence of the stable continues to speak not loudly, but faithfully, and for those willing to listen, it reveals a truth the noise of the world can never provide. God is near, quietly waiting to be welcomed. Mary's interior silence. At the center of Bethlehem's silence stands Mary, whose interior stillness becomes the most fertile space for the incarnation. While the world outside moves with urgency and noise, Mary inhabits a silence shaped by faith, trust, and deep attentiveness to God. Her silence is not emptiness, but fullness, a silence that listens, receives, and consents. In her, the mystery of Christ's birth is not only witnessed, it is welcomed from within. Mary's interior silence did not begin on the night of Christ's birth. It was formed long before, through a life oriented toward God. At the Annunciation, she receives a word that exceeds human understanding. Her response does not come from haste or calculation, but from a heart already attuned to God's presence. "Let it be done to me according to your word" is not a spontaneous impulse. It is the fruit of a silence cultivated over time. Bethlehem reveals the maturity of this silence. This interior silence allows Mary to hold paradox without anxiety. She carries within her both the promise of God and the uncertainty of the future. She knows joy and vulnerability at once. The Holy Night places her in circumstances that offer no reassurance. Poverty, displacement, and the absence of human recognition. Yet Mary remains at peace. Her silence does not deny difficulty. It embraces trust. In this, she becomes a model of faith capable of living with unanswered questions. Scripture tells us that Mary kept all these things, pondering them in her heart. This pondering is not passive reflection. It is an active, loving attention. Mary does not rush to interpret or explain the mystery unfolding before her. She allows it to deepen within her. The silence of her heart becomes a dwelling place for God. Through her, the Holy Night teaches that understanding follows reception, not the other way around. Mary's silence is also profoundly relational. It is not isolation, but communion. Her attentiveness is directed toward God, toward her child, and toward the world she carries in her heart. In the stable, she does not dominate the scene or draw attention to herself. Her presence is discreet, yet essential. She allows Christ to be seen, not herself. This humility of silence reveals the posture of authentic discipleship. The interior silence of Mary contrasts sharply with the inner noise that often dominates human experience. Fear, self-protection, and the desire for control generate restlessness. Mary's silence, by contrast, is rooted in surrender. She does not seek to manage the mystery of God. She consents to it. The Holy Night reveals that such surrender is not weakness, but strength, a strength born of trust in God's faithfulness. Mary's silence also shelters the Word. Just as her body becomes a physical dwelling for Christ, her interior silence becomes a spiritual sanctuary. In a world quick to speak and judge, Mary teaches the value of restraint. She listens more than she speaks. She receives more than she asserts. The Holy Night thus presents silence not as absence of voice, but as reverence for mystery. This silence carries maternal tenderness. Mary's gaze upon her child is unspoken, yet filled with love. In the quiet intimacy of the stable, she offers what no words could express: presence. The Holy Night reminds believers that love's deepest expressions often require no speech. Silence, when filled with love, becomes eloquent. In the life of the Church, Mary's interior silence remains a guiding light. The Church, like Mary, is called to receive Christ before proclaiming Him. Without interior silence, proclamation becomes noise rather than witness. Mary teaches that mission flows from contemplation. The Holy Night thus shapes the Church's identity as a listening community before it becomes a speaking one. For individual believers, Mary's silence poses a challenge. It invites them to cultivate an interior space where God can dwell without interruption. This requires discipline, patience, and trust. It means allowing unanswered questions to remain, resisting the urge to fill every moment with words or explanations. The Holy Night assures believers that such silence is not emptiness, but encounter. Mary's interior silence also reveals the cost of faith. To remain silent is to remain vulnerable. It means allowing oneself to be misunderstood or overlooked. Mary does not defend herself against suspicion or explain her role. She entrusts her truth to God. In doing so, She shows that faith does not require constant self-justification. The Holy Night invites believers to the same freedom. As the Holy Night unfolds, Mary's silence becomes a living testimony that God's greatest works occur in hiddenness. Through her, God enters the world not with noise, but with nearness. Her interior silence becomes the cradle of salvation. In contemplating Mary at Bethlehem, believers discover that silence is not something to fear, but something to receive, a sacred space where God chooses to dwell. Joseph and silent obedience. Alongside Mary in the silence of Bethlehem stands Joseph, a man whose obedience speaks without words. The Gospels record no spoken sentence from him. Yet, his presence is indispensable to the mystery of Christ's birth. Joseph's silence is not emptiness or hesitation. It is a silence shaped by listening, discernment, and faithful action. In him, the Holy Night reveals a form of obedience that does not seek recognition, but remains steadfast in trust. Joseph's silence begins with his willingness to listen. God does not speak to him through public proclamation, but through dreams, quiet, intimate moments that require attentiveness and courage to trust. Joseph receives messages that disrupt his expectations and challenge his understanding. Yet, he does not argue or demand clarification. He listens, accepts, and acts. His silence becomes the space where God's will is discerned and embraced. This silent obedience is marked by immediacy. Each time Joseph receives divine guidance, he responds without delay. He takes Mary into his home. He journeys to Bethlehem. He protects the child from danger. His actions flow directly from listening. The Holy Night shows that obedience is not passive waiting, but responsive movement rooted in trust. Joseph does not speak, yet his life becomes a continuous yes to God. Joseph's silence also reveals humility. He accepts a role that places him in the background. He is not the biological father of the child, yet he assumes full responsibility. He does not seek explanation or public validation. In a world that often measures worth by visibility, Joseph chooses fidelity over recognition. The Holy Night teaches that God entrusts great mysteries to those willing to remain hidden. In Bethlehem, Joseph's silence becomes protective. He creates a space of safety around Mary and the child. His attentiveness ensures that the vulnerability of the Incarnation is not exposed to unnecessary danger. This form of silence is not withdrawal, but vigilance. Joseph embodies a love that acts quietly, without drawing attention to itself. The Holy Night reveals that true strength often expresses itself through quiet responsibility. Joseph's obedience also requires sacrifice. He sets aside his own plans, reputation, and expectations. He embraces uncertainty and risk for the sake of a mystery he does not fully understand. His silence is not ignorance. It is surrender. The Holy Night presents Joseph as a model of faith, willing to move forward without complete clarity, trusting that God's guidance is sufficient. This silent obedience stands in contrast to the noise of self-assertion. Joseph does not explain himself to the world. He does not defend his actions or seek approval. He entrusts his truth to God alone. The Holy Night invites believers to consider whether their own obedience is shaped more by trust or by the desire to be seen and affirmed. Joseph's silence also carries a deep relational dimension. It fosters unity and peace within the Holy Family. His attentiveness to Mary's needs and his care for the child create an environment where love can flourish. The Holy Night shows that silence, when rooted in love, builds communion rather than distance. Joseph's quiet presence allows others to thrive. In the life of the Church, Joseph's silent obedience remains profoundly relevant. He represents all who serve faithfully without recognition. Caregivers, workers, parents, and those whose labor remains unseen. The Holy Night honors this hidden fidelity. It proclaims that God's work often advances through ordinary people whose faith is expressed in daily responsibility. For individual believers, Joseph's example offers both challenge and consolation. It challenges the impulse to control outcomes or demand certainty. It consoles those who labor in obscurity, reminding them that God sees what the world overlooks. The Holy Night assures believers that obedience offered in silence is never wasted. Joseph's silence ultimately reveals the trustworthiness of God. By entrusting the protection of his son to a silent, obedient man, God affirms that his plan unfolds not through force, but through faithfulness. The Holy Night becomes a testimony to the power of quiet trust. In Joseph, believers discover that listening, acting, and remaining hidden can become a path through which salvation enters the world. Silence and the poor. The silence of Bethlehem is inseparable from poverty. The place where Christ is born is not only quiet, it is materially poor, socially marginal, and largely unseen. This silence is not accidental. God chooses poverty as the environment in which his Son enters the world, revealing a profound solidarity with those whose lives unfold without voice, influence, or recognition. In Bethlehem, silence and poverty meet, and together they become a space of divine presence. Poverty often carries with it a forced silence. The poor are frequently unheard, overlooked, or dismissed. Their struggles remain invisible, their needs unspoken in the public sphere. By entering the world in poverty, God does not merely observe this silence. He inhabits it. The Holy Night reveals that God listens from within the silence of the poor. Christ's birth among them declares that their lives are not forgotten, and their silence is not empty in God's sight. The stable in Bethlehem stands outside the centers of power and wealth. It is a place without comfort, security, or prestige. Yet it becomes the dwelling of Emmanuel, God with us. This reversal challenges assumptions about where God chooses to be present. The Holy Night proclaims that God's presence is not guaranteed by abundance, but revealed in vulnerability. In choosing poverty, God sanctifies what the world often devalues. The silence of poverty is also marked by dependence. Those who lack resources must rely on others for survival. The newborn Christ shares this condition fully. He depends on Mary and Joseph for warmth, nourishment, and protection. In doing so, God affirms the dignity of those who live in need. The Holy Night teaches that dependence is not shameful. It is a fundamental human reality embraced by God Himself. This divine choice confronts societies that equate worth with productivity and success. In Bethlehem, God enters a life that produces nothing, owns nothing, and controls nothing. Yet this life carries infinite value. The silence of the poor becomes the place where God speaks most clearly about human dignity. The Holy Night reveals that worth is not earned, it is given. The shepherd's presence further deepens this theme. As laborers on the margins, they represent those whose lives unfold far from public attention. They live in silence, close to the land and the night. It is to them that the angelic message is first entrusted. The Holy Night reveals a preferential openness to the poor, not as exclusion of others, but as recognition of where hearts are most receptive. Those who live simply are often more able to listen. The silence and poverty of Bethlehem also expose the violence of indifference. While Christ is born in need, the world continues largely unaware. There is no uprising against injustice, no immediate transformation of social structures. God does not eliminate poverty by decree. Instead, He enters it. The Holy Night teaches that salvation begins not with structural change alone, but with presence that transforms from within. This has profound implications for the Church. To follow Christ is to listen to the silence of the poor, not as an abstract concept, but as a concrete call. Bethlehem invites the Church to be present where voices are unheard and lives are overlooked. The Holy Night challenges believers to resist the temptation to speak for the poor without first listening to them. Silence, in this context, becomes an act of respect. It allows the reality of poverty to be seen without being immediately explained or managed. The Holy Night teaches that before solutions, there must be encounter. God's response to poverty begins with nearness. In Bethlehem, divine love draws close, sharing the conditions of those in need. For believers, the silence of the poor calls for conversion. It asks uncomfortable questions about complicity, indifference, and fear. Are we willing to be present without control? Are we able to remain in silence without offering quick answers? The Holy Night suggests that true solidarity begins not with speech, but with shared presence. At the same time, the silence of Bethlehem carries hope. It reveals that poverty is not a barrier to God's presence, but a privileged place of encounter. God does not wait for conditions to improve before drawing near. He enters as He finds, offering dignity, companionship, and love. The Holy Night assures the poor that God is already among them, even when the world remains silent. Ultimately, the silence and poverty of Bethlehem reveal the heart of the gospel. God's love does not flow from strength to weakness, but dwells within weakness itself. By choosing the silence of the poor, God declares that no life is insignificant. In the quiet stable, the poor are no longer unseen. Their silence becomes holy, because God has chosen to make it His home. Silence and suffering. The silence of Bethlehem is inseparable from suffering. Though the Holy Night is often remembered for its beauty and peace, it unfolds within a world marked by pain. uncertainty, and hardship. God does not wait for suffering to be resolved before entering human history. He comes into it quietly, accepting its weight without protest. In Bethlehem, silence becomes the language through which God stands in solidarity with human suffering. Suffering often renders people silent. Pain can strip away words, leaving only endurance. Those who suffer deeply frequently find that their experience cannot be adequately expressed. By entering the world in silence, Christ joins this wordless human condition. The Holy Night reveals a God who does not explain suffering from a distance, but shares it from within. His silence is not indifference. It is companionship. The circumstances surrounding Christ's birth already contain signs of suffering. Mary gives birth far from home, in conditions lacking comfort or dignity. Joseph bears responsibility amid uncertainty and fear. The child is born into poverty, exposed to cold and vulnerability. These are not romantic details. They are realities that reflect the fragile conditions of many human lives. The Holy Night teaches that God's presence does not remove suffering, but enters it with compassion. This silent entry into suffering challenges expectations of divine intervention. Many seek a God who eliminates pain, who acts decisively and visibly. Bethlehem offers a different revelation. God chooses to remain close rather than distant, vulnerable rather than protected. The silence of the Holy Night declares that God's first response to suffering is not power, but presence. This presence transforms the meaning of suffering. While pain remains painful, it is no longer empty. In Christ, suffering becomes a place where God is near. The Holy Night does not glorify suffering, nor does it deny its weight. Instead, it redeems it by filling it with divine companionship. God does not abandon those who suffer in silence. He enters their silence. The connection between Bethlehem and Calvary deepens this truth. The silence of the manger foreshadows the silence of the cross. From birth to death, Christ's life is marked by a willingness to endure suffering without retaliation or complaint. The Holy Night begins a path that will lead through rejection, misunderstanding, and sacrifice. Suffering is not an interruption of God's plan. It is mysteriously woven into it. For those who suffer, the silence of Bethlehem offers consolation without false promises. It does not say that pain will disappear quickly or easily. Instead, it assures that God is present within the pain. This presence may be quiet, even hidden, but it is real. The Holy Night invites sufferers to recognize that their silence is not unnoticed by God. Silence also shapes the way suffering is shared. Words often fail to comfort those in pain. Bethlehem teaches that presence can be more healing than explanation. Mary and Joseph do not speak much in the stable. Yet their shared silence becomes a space of mutual support. The Holy Night reveals that love in suffering often takes the form of staying rather than speaking. In the life of the Church, this insight has lasting implications. Pastoral care, charity, and accompaniment are most faithful to the gospel when they mirror Bethlehem's silence. Before teaching or advising, the Church is called to be present. The Holy Night calls believers to resist the urge to offer quick answers to complex pain, and instead to remain near in humility. The silence of suffering also calls for hope. Christ's silent birth assures that suffering does not have the final word. The light that enters the darkness of Bethlehem promises transformation, even when it unfolds slowly. The Holy Night plants hope not in immediate relief, but in enduring love that accompanies every step. For believers today, the silence of Bethlehem invites a new way of responding to suffering, both their own and that of others. It calls for patience, compassion, and trust. It encourages a faith that does not depend on constant explanations, but rests in God's nearness. Ultimately, the silence and suffering of Bethlehem reveal the depth of God's commitment to humanity. He does not save from afar. He comes close, shares the weight of pain, and remains faithful through it. In the quiet of the Holy Night, suffering is no longer faced alone. God is there, silent but present, beginning a redemption that will unfold through love. Silence before the Word. The silence of Bethlehem reaches its deepest meaning when understood as the silence that comes before the Word. Before Christ speaks, before he teaches, heals, or proclaims the kingdom, he is silent. The eternal Word of God enters the world without words. This silence is not accidental. It is essential. It reveals that God's self-communication begins not with speech, but with presence. In Bethlehem, silence becomes the threshold through which the Word passes into human history. In human experience, words often come too quickly. They are used to explain, defend, persuade, or control. Yet the most meaningful words are born from silence. The Holy Night reflects this truth on a divine scale. God does not rush to speak. He allows silence to prepare the world to receive him. The silence of Bethlehem is therefore not the absence of revelation, but its preparation. It creates space where the Word can be received rather than resisted. The child in the manger is the Word made flesh, yet he does not speak. His silence teaches that God's truth is not dependent on volume or argument. Before doctrine, there is relationship. Before instruction, there is encounter. The Holy Night reveals that God desires to be known not only through what he says, but through who he is. Silence allows this deeper knowing to emerge. This silence also reveals the humility of God's communication. God does not overwhelm the world with divine speech. He does not impose truth through force or rhetoric. Instead, he entrusts his word to time, growth, and relationship. Christ will one day speak with authority, but only after years of silent living. Bethlehem teaches that God respects the human process of receiving truth gradually. Silence before the Word also mirrors the rhythm of creation. In the beginning, before God speaks, there is formlessness and stillness. Creation unfolds through a word spoken into silence. Likewise, the new creation begins in Bethlehem with silence preceding speech. The Holy Night thus marks not only the birth of Christ, but the beginning of a renewed creation, shaped by listening and receptivity. This silence invites listening rather than reaction. To encounter the Word, one must first become silent. The Holy Night challenges the human tendency to speak before listening, to judge before understanding. Bethlehem invites humanity to pause, to attend, and to receive. The word spoken into silence is not grasped by force, but welcomed by openness. For Mary, this silence before the word is deeply personal. She carries the word within her body before he is ever heard by others. Her silence is maternal and contemplative. She does not rush to proclaim. She first receives. In her, the Church learns that proclamation without prior reception becomes empty. The Holy Night affirms that listening precedes speaking. Joseph, too, lives this silence. He does not hear a public declaration, but receives guidance quietly. His obedience unfolds without explanation. In him, silence becomes fidelity. The Holy Night shows that the word can guide lives even when it is not spoken aloud. Silence becomes a place of trust where God's will is discerned rather than debated. In the life of the Church, silence before the word remains essential. Scripture is not merely read. It is received. Liturgy includes moments of silence so that the word may take root. Without silence, the word risks becoming information rather than transformation. The Holy Night reminds the Church that God's word bears fruit, where hearts are quiet enough to receive it. The modern world struggles with this silence. Words are constant, opinions immediate, reactions instantaneous. Bethlehem stands as a gentle protest against this excess. It reminds humanity that truth spoken without silence loses depth. The Holy Night calls believers to recover the discipline of listening not only to God, but to one another. Silence before the word also shapes moral life. It allows conscience to awaken. In silence, the heart becomes capable of discerning truth from impulse. The Holy Night teaches that ethical clarity is born not in noise, but in attentiveness. God's word addresses the human heart most deeply when it is not drowned out by distraction. Ultimately, the silence of Bethlehem reveals that God's word is a gift, not a demand. It waits to be welcomed. The child who does not yet speak invites the world to become quiet enough to hear him when he does. The Holy Night assures believers that when silence is embraced, the word will come not to dominate, but to dwell. Thus, silence before the word is not a pause to be filled, but a space to be honored. It is the sacred ground on which God chooses to speak. In Bethlehem's quiet, the word takes flesh. And in every heart that learns this silence, the same word continues to be born. Silence in the Church and liturgy. The silence of Bethlehem does not end with the Nativity. It is carried forward into the life of the Church, especially through her liturgy. From the beginning, the Church has understood that silence is not an interruption of worship, but one of its essential forms. Just as God chose silence as the setting for the Incarnation, so the Church preserves silence as a space where the mystery of Christ can be encountered, received, and allowed to transform the heart. Liturgy is often described as the Church's public prayer, yet its deepest movements unfold beyond words. Spoken prayers, readings, and hymns shape the celebration, but silence gives them depth. Without silence, liturgy risks becoming performance rather than encounter. The silence of Bethlehem reminds the Church that God is not revealed only through what is said, but through what is reverently received. Silence allows the faithful to move from hearing to interior participation. In the celebration of Christmas, this connection becomes especially clear. The Church gathers at night, often in subdued light, echoing the original stillness of Bethlehem. Moments of quiet are intentionally preserved after readings, after communion, and within the rhythm of prayer. These moments are not empty pauses. They are invitations to dwell with the mystery. The Holy Night teaches that silence is the language of adoration. Silence in the liturgy serves a sacramental purpose. Just as bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ through God's action, silence becomes the space where the Word and the sacrament are received interiorly. The faithful do not create the mystery. They consent to it. Bethlehem's silence reminds the Church that grace is given, not produced. Silence disposes the heart to receive what cannot be earned or controlled. This liturgical silence also protects reverence. In a culture accustomed to constant noise, reverence can easily be lost. The Church's silence stands as a countercultural witness, proclaiming that some realities demand stillness rather than commentary. The mystery of God made man is not exhausted by explanation. The Holy Night teaches that reverence begins when words fall short and silence takes their place. Historically, the Church has guarded silence as a sign of humility before mystery. Monastic traditions, in particular, have embodied Bethlehem's silence through disciplined listening and restrained speech. Their liturgical life reflects a conviction that God is encountered most deeply when the soul becomes still. This monastic wisdom has shaped the broader Church, reminding all believers that silence is not withdrawal from mission, but preparation for it. Silence in the Church is also pastoral. It creates space for the wounded, the grieving, and the searching, those whose lives are marked by experiences beyond words. The Holy Night affirms that silence can be a form of welcome. In the Church's quiet, people find permission to bring their whole selves before God without explanation or performance. Bethlehem teaches that God meets people where words are insufficient. At the same time, silence in the liturgy forms the faithful spiritually. It trains the heart to listen, to wait, and to discern. Over time, this discipline shapes a different way of being in the world. Those who learn silence before God become more attentive to others. The Holy Night thus extends from the liturgy into daily life, forming believers who act from contemplation rather than impulse. The Church's silence is not opposed to proclamation. Rather, it grounds proclamation in authenticity. Preaching that emerges from silence carries weight because it is rooted in encounter. The Holy Night reveals that the Church speaks most truthfully when she has first listened deeply. Without Bethlehem's silence, the Church's voice risks becoming just another noise among many. In the modern context, silence in the Church is often misunderstood. Some experience it as awkward or unnecessary. Yet Bethlehem challenges this discomfort. It reminds believers that silence is a learned practice one that requires patience and trust. The Holy Night assures the Church that silence, though demanding, opens a path to deeper communion with God. Ultimately, silence in the Church and liturgy keeps the Incarnation alive. It allows Christ to remain at the center rather than human activity. The Church does not replace Bethlehem's silence with constant speech. She preserves it as a living inheritance. Each time, the faithful gather in reverent stillness, the Holy Night is renewed. Thus, the silence of Bethlehem continues to shape the Church's prayer. It teaches that worship is not only something we do, but something we receive. In silence, the Church stands before God as Mary did open, attentive and trusting. And in that silence, Christ continues to be born quietly and faithfully in the heart of the believing community. Silence in the modern world. The silence of Bethlehem confronts the modern world with a gentle but unsettling question. Is there still room for silence? Contemporary life is saturated with sound, speed, and constant stimulation. Information flows without pause, opinions demand immediate response, and technology ensures that silence is rarely encountered unintentionally. In such a context, the Holy Night appears distant not because its mystery has faded, but because the conditions required to perceive it have grown scarce. Modern noise is not only external, it is interior. Minds are crowded with concerns, comparisons, expectations, and anxieties. Even moments of physical quiet are often filled with mental activity. The silence of Bethlehem challenges this interior noise. It reveals that without stillness, the deepest realities of life remain inaccessible. God's coming in silence exposes how easily meaning is lost when attention is fragmented. The modern world often equates noise with relevance. To be heard is to exist. To be visible is to matter. Bethlehem stands in quiet contradiction to this logic. The most decisive event in human history occurs without publicity, trending attention, or immediate recognition. The Holy Night proclaims that truth does not depend on amplification. What matters most may arrive quietly and require patience to be recognized. This has profound implications for how faith is lived today. Many struggle to hear God not because He is silent, but because their lives leave no space for listening. The silence of Bethlehem invites intentional resistance to constant noise. It calls for practices that reclaim attention moments of prayer, contemplation, and deliberate withdrawal from endless stimulation. The Holy Night suggests that silence must be chosen if it is to be found. Silence in the modern world is often uncomfortable. It exposes unresolved questions and inner emptiness. Yet Bethlehem teaches that this discomfort is not a threat, but an invitation. Silence reveals what noise conceals. It creates the conditions for truth to surface and for God's presence to be recognized. The Holy Night assures believers that what emerges in silence is not condemnation, but mercy. The modern fear of silence also reflects a fear of vulnerability. Noise provides distraction and control. Silence requires surrender. In Bethlehem, God embraces vulnerability completely. The child in the manger does not control his environment. He receives it This challenges modern assumptions about autonomy and mastery. The Holy Night invites a rediscovery of trust over control. For communities, the loss of silence affects relationships. Conversation becomes reactive rather than attentive. Listening gives way to broadcasting. Bethlehem offers another model. Its silence fosters attentiveness, presence, and mutual recognition. The Holy Night suggests that silence is not the absence of communication, but the foundation of meaningful communication. In public life, silence is often dismissed as weakness. Yet Bethlehem reveals a different kind of strength. God does not shout over the world's noise. He remains faithful in quiet presence. This endurance challenges cultures driven by immediacy. The Holy Night teaches that transformation often unfolds slowly and unseen, sustained by patience rather than urgency. For the Church in the modern world, this presents both challenge and opportunity. The temptation to compete with noiseto match volume with volume is strong. Yet Bethlehem reminds the Church of her true witness. She need not dominate attention to be faithful. Her strength lies in preserving spaces of silence where God can be encountered without distraction. On a personal level, reclaiming silence requires courage. It means setting boundaries, embracing limits, and accepting moments of unproductivity. The Holy Night assures believers that such choices are not losses, but gains. In silence, the heart becomes capable of depth. Life regains coherence. God's presence becomes perceptible. The silence of Bethlehem does not reject modern life, but seeks to heal it. It offers a rhythm that restores balance between action and contemplation. It teaches that silence and engagement are not opposites, but partners. Without silence, action becomes frantic. With silence, action becomes purposeful. Ultimately, Bethlehem stands as a quiet invitation to the modern world. Slow down, listen, and make room. The Holy Night continues to unfold wherever silence is reclaimed not as escape, but as encounter. In a world overwhelmed by noise, the silence of Bethlehem remains a gentle, faithful light, guiding hearts back to what is essential. Learning to live the silence of Bethlehem. The silence of Bethlehem is not meant to be admired from a distance. It is meant to be lived. Having contemplated its meaning through God's action, Mary's interior stillness, Joseph's obedience, the poor suffering, the Word, the Church, and the modern world, the final invitation of the Holy Night is practical and personal. Bethlehem calls believers not only to understand silence, but to embody it, to allow it to shape daily life as a way of faith. To live the silence of Bethlehem begins with intention. Silence does not happen automatically in a noisy world. It must be chosen. This choice is not rejection of responsibility or relationship, but a commitment to depth over distraction. The Holy Night teaches that silence is a form of hospitality. Just as Mary and Joseph made room for Christ in poverty and uncertainty, believers are invited to make room for God by creating spaces of stillness where His presence can be welcomed. Living this silence requires learning to listen first to God, then to others, and